It is typical now for a lot of folks to say, I want to start churches in cities, and they're not sensitive to the kind of churches that ought to be, the kind of churches that are effective in cities. And what I'm about to tell you, when I get to how, which is about 5 minutes away, we're going to talk about church planting. But I think probably in some of the workshops you'll be talking about this. But the churches that you plant here have got to be churches that fit the urban environment. And this is my very fast, top-level little set of characteristics of those churches. Anybody who works in the city will have their own list. I don't want you to say, this is Tim Keller's list, this is it. I mean, there's a lot of other ways of breaking this down, but here's what they are. You've got to know that urban churches they are different. They ought to be different. Oh, not different in the basics. They have to have take your Doctrine of the Church course, and they have to have the marks of the church, preaching the word, and baptism, Lord's Supper, and discipline. They've got to, they have to preach the word right. They have to worship, edify, witness. I mean, I'm not saying that urban churches are not a category under the universal church. I mean, they're separate, but they're distinct inside what a biblical church should be. And here's my 7. One is urban churches have to be extremely aware of cultural differences. Let me just say something. If you're in America, now I'm talking to Americans for the minute, for American City. If you're a white person in America, we are the dominant culture. And that means that when you go into cities in order to minister, you're at a disadvantage. You know why? Every minority knows there's different cultures, but white people don't know that, really. Now, very simple, look. White people there's a way to make decisions. There's a way to express emotion. There's a way to handle conflict. There's a way to schedule time. And white Americans do all that. And non-white Americans know that there's a white way to do all those things, but we don't. We just think that's the way things are done. Non-urban people tend to believe that everybody thinks like they do. But if you're a real urban person, you know that's just not true. And that is a harder thing for white people. I know white people come into cities to do ministry, and after 10 years, they still are not really urban. Because they still act like, well, this isn't the white way to do things, this is just the way things are done. What non-white people want from white people in America generally is they don't want you to stop being what you are, but they want to be surprised. They want to be surprised that you do understand there's a difference. And even though churches, there is no neutral way to do anything. One of the hard things about urban ministry is there really isn't a neutral, multi-ethnic way to make decisions, or a neutral, multi-ethnic way to do music, or a neutral, multi-ethnic. The fact of the matter is different cultures do things differently, and as soon as you start to do things, you are, to a great degree, reflecting one culture or another. But in the urban setting, you should be working like crazy to make sure you have as much breadth of appeal as possible. You have to show awareness that there's differences, even when you're doing something in a certain way, so that you do it with humility. And urban churches and urban church leaders know there's always going to be tension, because it's going to be a multi-ethnic ministry. It's got to be, because the city is more multi-ethnic. It's more multi-ethnic than it was 40 years ago, when all the white people are out there and all the black and Hispanic people are in here. I mean, now everything's mixed up, and it's harder than ever to do urban ministry unless, and you expect the tension, but urban leaders pay that price. They know that's part of it. They know there's always going to be tension. There's always going to be questions, and they're always going to be having to think about those things. And urban people will do that. They're sensitive to those differences. They're patient with those differences. They work. That's number one.